Hello and welcome to our US election special. More than 80 million Americans have already voted. That is 57% of the 2016 votes. According to a Reuters Ipsos poll, Biden is leading by 8 points and 51% voters are supporting Joe Biden. COVID-19 could be a spoiler in 13 states. Weekly average of new cases rose 45% in 2 weeks. Joe Biden has a safe lead in about 24 states and is winning around 290 electoral votes. Some swing states could change things. What would a second-term Trump presidency mean for the world? Our special guest today, Anthony Scaramucci, former White House communications director. He supported Trump in 2016 and was fired after spending 11 days as Trump's communications director. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. My first question to you would be, you spent about 11 days in the White House. How would you describe that period?
Oh, listen, it obviously went by very quickly, but it was chaotic. I mean, unfortunately, the last 4 years have been chaotic. I worked for Mr. Trump on the campaign. I was a member of his executive transition team, and then I also worked on the inaugural committee. So, the 11 days in the White House were unfortunate, but that didn't change my opinion. I tried to stay loyal to the president for a couple of years after that. It just became impossible to stay loyal to him given the policy decisions that were being made and the racism and the overall nastiness. And then obviously, due to his lack of managerial skills, he mishandled the pandemic here in the United States, which really toppled the economy. So, but look, it's been chaotic. It's been chaotic from day one. When I was fired, it seemed like a very big deal at the time, but now 90 or 100 people have circulated in and out of the White House. And so the person that fired me, General Kelly, and I, the irony here is that we've actually become very close personal friends.
Right. How would you describe the president in 3 words?
It's unfit, impetuous, and I would say at times he's reflexive, meaning he'll do the opposite of what his aides are telling him. So unfit and reflexive. He's insecure too. So it's more than just 3 words. But those are the words around the president. That's the reason why he's had such difficulty.
Right, and you're right. You were not the only one. There are at least 70 to 80 top officials who had to exit the White House or because of one pretext or the other. What do you think led to so many exits? Was it the president's own personal insecurity?
I do believe that, and I would say to you that the only people left inside the White House are either related to him by DNA or marriage, or they have some kind of financial interest or political interest related to power. Guys like Kelly and Mattis and Tillerson, anybody that could stand on their own 2 feet, anybody that had their own level of independence, either through independent wealth or independent stature, long gone from the White House.
Right. Just to ask you about your own relationship with the president, have you been in touch with him over the last 4 years now, ever since you exited the White House?
Well, yeah, listen, listen, it's not even a personal thing about the president. It's just an objective evaluation of his performance as president. The last time I talked to the president was in 2019. We stopped talking to each other once it became clear that he's not somebody that I was able to politically support anymore.
And that's why you are supporting Joe Biden.
I am supporting Joe Biden. Yes, I'm linked up with the Lincoln Project and Republicans for Joe Biden, as well as the Bush 43 alumni for Joe Biden. We're trying to convince the American people that it's time to return to some level of normalcy. And we're also worried about the threats that Mr. Trump is making to the institutions of our democracy.
Right.
As you know, it's been well publicized. He's not necessarily wants to accept the peaceful transfer of power in the United States. And that's something unconscionable to a patriot.
Right. Tell me something. What would a second-term Trump presidency mean for America? How would you think of him in a second term? Will he be more predictable? Will he listen more?
Well, listen, he's 74 years old. You're not going to change President Trump. So, three things would happen in a second term. First of all, I would think it's embarking upon an American winter. He made the country sicker, weaker, and poorer as a result of the 4 years inside of the White House. And so you would get more of that. You'd have unnecessary deaths, tens of thousands, if not 100 or so thousand more deaths as a result of his mishandling of the pandemic. You're not going to be able to get the economy started. If you're going to allow the virus to rage throughout the economy, and you're going to be showing up with data of 80, 90, 100,000 cases a day. We have over 9 million people now that have the coronavirus. We have 600 deaths per million. South Korea only has 20 deaths per million. So it would be, I think it'd be a catastrophe for the United States, but it would also be bad for the world. He's weakened our global alliances. He's someone that has a tendency to denigrate democratic leaders and praise dictators. So to me, I think it'd be very bad for everybody.
Right. And with regard to foreign policy, do you think he'll do a good job when it comes to countries like China? Do you think he'll revisit his North Korea policy? They're exchanging letters. They speak about great letters that they're talking about. But do you think there will be more predictability in foreign policy or not at all?
Well, listen, I don't think there'll be any predictability. You're talking about the North Korean situation. Nothing came of that. There was a lot of bombast and bluster. Ultimately, the North Koreans are continuing to grow their nuclear arsenal. And so it really didn't have a successful outcome. I would also say, as it relates to the Chinese situation, we may have trade differences, then there may need to be an evening in the trade situation. But I don't think the bellicosity of the rhetoric, the bullying, the flippant impetuosity is winning any fans globally. It's not the right way to treat allies. It's not, frankly, the right way to treat adversaries. So to me, we need a strong bilateral relationship with China. We have to recognize that we're going to be part of the earth together. The America First strategy is ultimately turning out to be an America Alone strategy, and that'll be dangerous to the world. The president has disavowed the David Ricardo principle of global trade.
Right, but would you write him off just yet, Anthony?
No, I'm not writing him off. I'm out there working every day. We have 4 days left until the election. Definitely would not write him off. There's a path for him to win the presidency. Many people feel that the polls are not necessarily accurate. I think he's going to get crushed on Tuesday. I'm not just talking my book. I'm just looking at the data as a money manager. You have 25 million additional voters this time versus last time. And so the predominant voter in this country is an independent, followed by Democrats, and the smaller group of people would categorize themselves as Republicans.
Right. You're perhaps one of the few people, we've of course heard from John Bolton as well in the past, who've come out, who've spoken about their experiences in the White House. Do you think this coronavirus pandemic and how Trump treated his own illness has left many White House staffers angry? And if he loses power next week, there will be many more people who might be wanting to come out and tell their stories to the world?
Yes. Listen, I mean, look, he's one of the more powerful, if not the most powerful person in the world. And so it is intimidating to a large group of people to speak the truth related to a person that has that level of power. But, I'm hoping that there will be a reckoning and eventually a reconciliation inside the Republican Party. But yes, I do think people will be out there speaking out.
Right. This election is going to boil down to a couple of states. Which states, according to you, will matter in this election if Donald Trump has to return to power?
Well, listen, there's only one real path for him to win the election. He's got to win Florida and Pennsylvania. And then obviously, if he does that, he still needs Arizona or one of the northern Midwestern states. That would be Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Michigan. And so if you look at the polling data there, that is going to be a hard thing for him to do. Now, is it possible? Certainly. He won last time by 78,000 votes. It was a narrow election. One of the things that he's not been able to do is have a popular presidency. He's never been over 50% if you look at the weighted average approval ratings.
Right. Would you still call him an astute politician because he managed to impress the American voter in 2016? He managed to make it to the White House. And would you say that he has been preparing from 2020 since the time he entered White House and was sworn in for the first time?
Well, listen, he has incomparable political instincts. You can't go from being a reality television star to 17 short months later, you're arriving into the American presidency. And so I applaud him for that. You may remember this. He announced his reelection on the day that he was sworn in, January 20th of 2017. And that gave him the opportunity to raise tremendous amounts of money. Now, we have to ask ourselves, what happened to that money? Usually the incumbent has more money to spend than the challenger. It seems like a lot of that money was wasted, or let's just call it misplaced. So, yes, he's been preparing himself for 2020. But if you don't have the right managerial skills or the right temperament for the job, when you get hit with a crisis, and in this case, the COVID-19 crisis, you could see that paralyzed the executive branch. And I think that will be his undoing. Ultimately, I think people will look back after he loses, they'll say, wow, he lost because he really couldn't handle or manage that crisis.
All right, on that note, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. We will talk about the possible legal challenges to the election result. We will have with us Professor of Law at University of Kentucky, Joshua Douglas, with us. And also, we'll tell you about the Ipsos survey about how Indians view Donald Trump. We will have the Managing Director of Ipsos India with us, Amit Adarkar, shortly.